There is a very specific kind of loneliness that has nothing to do with being alone. It happens in a room full of people who love you. You're at the table, laughing along, nodding at the right moments. And somewhere underneath all of that, a quieter voice is asking a question you're too afraid to say out loud. What am I actually doing here? Why do I feel like a stranger inside my own life? If you know that feeling, if you've ever driven home in complete silence, radio off, just to hear your own thoughts again, I need you to give me the next 20 minutes, because what I'm about to tell you will sound strange at first. But by the end of this video, it will make more sense than almost anything anyone has ever told you about yourself. Here's the first thing you need to hear. You are not broken. You are not cold or defective or failing at life. What you're feeling is the early, uncomfortable stage of a mind that has simply outgrown the room it's sitting in. Look closely at the people you consider the strongest, most grounded human beings you know. Chances are they're quiet. They don't perform for attention. They don't narrate their private lives for an audience. They don't beg for a seat at a table that was never really theirs. They move through the world like they don't need it to validate them. You probably already have one of these people in your life. The one who never posts, never overshares, rarely raises their voice, and yet somehow feels more solid than anyone else in the room. You've likely wondered quietly how they got that way. This video is about exactly that. To everyone else, that looks like damage. The crowd sees someone walking alone and assumes the worst. Lonely, arrogant, something must be wrong with them. But what if the crowd has it backwards? What if walking away isn't a symptom of something broken, but the result of something finally working correctly? The psychiatrist Carl Jung spent his life mapping the darker rooms of human consciousness, and he arrived at an uncomfortable conclusion. Most people don't form relationships out of love. They form them out of fear, because standing alone with your own thoughts, in silence, is one of the most terrifying things a person can do. Think about the last time your phone died, or the Wi-Fi went out, and you were left with nothing but your own head for company. For most people, that's not peaceful. It's unbearable. Within minutes, they're pacing, reaching for anything to fill the gap. Not because silence is dangerous, because silence is honest, and honesty is the one thing most people have spent their whole lives avoiding. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why the urge to pull away from the noise isn't punishing you. It's protecting you. But first, you need to see what it's actually asking you to leave behind. Picture a Sunday night. Your group chat is buzzing about a dinner next weekend. You already know immediately that you don't want to go. And yet, your thumbs are typing, "Yes, can't wait," before your brain has even finished the sentence. That's not politeness. That's a reflex, and it runs deeper than you think. Thousands of years ago, being cast out of the tribe meant death in the wild, alone, with no protection. So your brain built a survival system around one goal: never get rejected, never get left behind. That system is still running today. It just doesn't know the stakes have changed. When you feel a flash of anxiety over setting a boundary with a friend, your nervous system reacts like you're about to be thrown out into the cold, even though, logically, you know you'd be fine. Nobody is going to leave you in the wilderness for saying, "Actually, that doesn't work for me." But your body hasn't gotten that memo yet, and it may never fully agree with your logic. You learn to act anyway. Jung had a name for the character we build to manage that fear: the persona. Borrowed from the Latin word for a theatrical mask, it's the version of you built for public consumption. The agreeable voice, the polite laugh at dinner, the enthusiastic reply in the group chat you didn't want to answer. It shows up at work, too. The nod in a meeting when you privately disagree with the plan. The "no worries at all" you type back after someone wastes an hour of your time. None of these moments feel significant on their own. That's exactly why they work. The mask never asks for a dramatic sacrifice, just a small one, over and over, until small becomes permanent. Jung never said the mask was the problem. A mask is just good manners. The problem starts when the mask stops coming off. Think about the last event you attended purely to avoid disappointing someone. Think about the last time you stayed quiet while someone crossed a line, just to keep things comfortable. What did that feel like? Low in your stomach. That heavy, sinking weight. That was a small piece of you shrinking. Every time you swallow an honest reaction to keep the peace, you're not being kind. You're paying with a piece of yourself. And here's the part almost nobody warns you about. That bill comes due eventually. Usually around the moment you catch your own reflection and realize that everyone around you loves a character you built, and not one of them actually knows you. Now picture what happens the moment you finally set the mask down. It rarely starts with a confrontation. It starts with silence. You stop replying instantly to messages designed to guilt you. You stop over-explaining decisions that were never anyone's business but yours. You stop performing the role of the person who keeps everyone else comfortable. To you, this feels like the first clean breath you've taken in years. So here's a question worth sitting with. How do the people around you actually respond to that? Not everyone, of course. Some people will barely notice, because their own life has enough room in it for you to change without it costing them anything. Pay attention to those people. They matter more than this video has time to explain. But watch closely at the ones who do react, because their reaction usually tells you more about them than it does about you. Do they celebrate it? Do they say, "I'm proud of you for finally protecting your peace"? Rarely. More often, they go cold. They call you distant, selfish. "You've changed," they say, as if staying quiet and available forever was a debt you owed them. Someone might even say, "You used to be so much more fun," as if your exhaustion was the price of admission for their comfort, and now that you've stopped paying it, the friendship feels unbalanced to them. Why would your peace make anyone else angry? Here's the uncomfortable answer. Your freedom works like a mirror. When you stop performing, everyone still performing has to look at their own mask a little more directly than they'd like. Your calm doesn't threaten them because it's cruel. It threatens them because it's evidence that the mask was optional the whole time. Jung wrote about this exact pattern, that people will go to almost any length, no matter how irrational, to avoid sitting alone with their own thoughts. Endless scrolling, constant noise, drama that fills a silence nobody wants to face. All of it, a way of avoiding 30 unfiltered minutes with themselves. That's worth repeating, because it explains so much of what looks confusing from the outside. Why some people seem to manufacture chaos out of nothing. Why an argument appears out of a calm afternoon for no clear reason. Noise is a distraction from the one conversation they're most afraid of having, the one with themselves. When you walk away from that noise, you break an unspoken agreement. I'll keep pretending if you keep pretending. And the people still inside that agreement rarely forgive the one who stepped outside it. But stepping outside the noise is only the first move. Underneath it, something much heavier and far more useful is about to wake up. Leaving the crowd is step one. But here's the real question. Why do the strongest people you know actively choose solitude, even when they don't have to? It's not just to escape the noise outside. It's to face something specific inside. What Jung called the shadow. The shadow is the part of your mind where every instinct, urge, and emotion that society labeled unacceptable gets quietly stored. Anger, you were told, was too much. Ambition, you were told, was too selfish. Grief you never had permission to finish feeling. None of that disappears just because it goes unspoken. It waits. And most people spend enormous energy every single day keeping that door shut. Energy that could be going almost anywhere else in their life, if they weren't so busy guarding a room they've never actually opened. People who pretend they have no shadow tend to overperform kindness, constant positivity, compulsive niceness. They'll tell you often that they could never hurt anyone, and the truth is usually that they've never tested it, because confrontation terrifies them. There's a real difference between being harmless and being peaceful. A harmless person is agreeable because they lack the nerve to be anything else. A peaceful person has real capacity for conflict, real capacity for anger, and has simply learned to aim it on purpose instead of leaking it everywhere. Suppressed anger doesn't vanish just because you refuse to look at it. It leaks out sideways, as sarcasm, as sudden coldness, as resentment you can't quite explain towards someone who didn't do anything that day. That's the shadow operating without your permission, because you never gave it a proper place to exist. Which one are you, actually? Peaceful, or just afraid of what happens if you stop being nice? Jung put it in a single sentence that still holds up. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Remember that feeling from the very start of this video, the one in the crowded room, the sense of being a stranger inside your own life. This is where it was leading you the entire time. Solitude is what finally lets that basement door swing open. In the quiet, your shadow stops hiding, and you're forced to actually look at your own capacity for bitterness, for rage, for the mistakes you've spent years avoiding. That's uncomfortable. It's also the exact moment real strength gets built. Because once you've made peace with your own darkness, other people lose their ability to shame you with it. You stop flinching at disapproval. You stop needing anyone's permission to be exactly what you are. This is also why manipulation stops working on people who've done this work. Guilt, shame, and social pressure only have leverage over the parts of you that you're still hiding from yourself. Once nothing is hidden, here's what most self-help content won't tell you about this process. It costs something, and the price is real emotional isolation, at least for a while. Think of a man in his early 30s, at a work happy hour, half listening to a coworker complain about someone else's promotion. Not long ago, that conversation would have pulled him right in. Now he just watches, sees the insecurity underneath the complaint, sees exactly what's driving it, and feels nothing but tired. He laughs at the right moments, says the right things, and drives home feeling more alone than if he'd skipped the whole night. That's what happens as your self-awareness grows. Your tolerance for surface-level noise drops toward zero. Gossip, status bragging, performative drama. It stops being entertaining and starts being exhausting, because you can suddenly see the machinery running underneath all of it. You start noticing the insecurity behind the loudest bragging, the quiet resentment behind an overly sweet compliment, the fear of being left driving someone's controlling behavior. And once you can see it, you can't unsee it. The illusion loses its grip permanently. It's not a superpower. It can feel more like a curse some days, because it takes away the comfortable option of just going along with the story everyone else is telling. But it also means you stop getting blindsided by people, because you saw the pattern coming long before it turned into a problem. That's usually the moment people look at an old friend group and realize the connection that used to feel automatic just isn't there anymore. Not out of anger, just distance. This is why the path feels lonely, not because there aren't enough people on the planet, but because very few people are operating at the depth you're now sitting in. A lot of human connection runs on a quiet, mutual agreement to not look too closely at each other. Once you stop trading in that agreement, your circle naturally gets smaller. It's not that you decided to cut anyone off. It's that the friendships built entirely on surface conversations simply run out of things to say once you stop supplying the surface. Some nights that means sitting alone by choice, not because there was nowhere to be, but because your own honest company has started to feel more peaceful than a room full of people still wearing masks. Here's an important distinction, because it's easy to get this wrong. None of this means becoming cold or friendless or shutting everyone out. That's not strength. That's just a different kind of hiding, dressed up to look like growth. Real solitude doesn't make you allergic to people. It makes you selective. It filters out the connections running on performance and leaves room for the rare ones that don't need a mask at all. The friend you can sit with in total silence and still feel understood. Those relationships don't disappear when you stop performing. If anything, they get stronger, because for the first time, They're built on the version of you that's actually real. You'll usually know these people by how little they react when you set a boundary. No coldness, no guilt trip, just, okay, makes sense. That reaction alone tells you everything about who was drawn to your mask and who was drawn to you. So if this video is landing hard for you, that doesn't mean you need to disappear from everyone in your life. It means it's time to get honest about which relationships were built on your mask and which ones were built on you. Give it a real test. Pick one relationship that matters to you, and for 1 week, show up without the performance. Say the honest thing instead of the easy thing. Skip the plans you don't actually want, and watch what happens. If the relationship survives that, it was real. If it doesn't, you didn't lose a friend. You lost a costume fitting. If you've made it this far, you're probably already somewhere on this road. You've felt the sting of outgrowing people you used to be close to. You've felt the cold shoulder that comes after setting your first real boundary. You've felt how heavy true self-reliance actually is, underneath all the aesthetic quotes about it. Here's the truth to carry out of this video. Solitude isn't a punishment. It's a filter. It quietly removes what was never real to begin with, and leaves you with what actually is. Once you stop needing a crowd to confirm who you are, most of its power over you disappears. Criticism turns into background noise. Rejection turns into redirection. Even praise stops meaning as much, because you're no longer collecting it to feel whole. None of this happens overnight, and it isn't a straight line. Some weeks the old pull toward approval will come back stronger than ever, and that's not failure. That's just the nervous system checking whether the new way of living is actually safe. It gets quieter every time you don't go back to the mask. You stop waiting for someone else, a friend group, a partner, a room full of applause, to hand you permission to be yourself. The only approval that was ever going to hold up is the quiet one you give yourself, alone, at the end of the day. People will often say some version of, "The most terrifying thing is to fully accept yourself." And whether or not Jung said those exact words, the idea holds up under pressure. Self-acceptance is harder and more valuable than almost anything the crowd has to offer. The strongest people don't walk alone because they hate everyone else. They walk alone because, somewhere along the way, they found something they valued more than being liked by a room that never really knew them. They found themselves. Master your shadow. Protect your peace. Walk the quiet path, not because it's easy, but because it's yours. You don't need a single dramatic moment to start this. It usually begins the next time someone asks you for something you don't want to give. And instead of the automatic yes, you just pause for 1 extra second before you answer. And if any part of this described exactly what you've been feeling and couldn't put into words, tell me in 1 sentence, in the comments, what your lonely room moment was. I read everyone, and if you want the next video the moment it's out, you already know what to do.